Hi, everyone. This is Lauren Baker from Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's Expert Panel Live webinar brought to you by CallRail and Snapshot. Today, we're going to be discussing how agencies leverage AI tools to drive ROI. And with us today, we have Zach Elbel of CallRail, Senior Product Marketing Manager, and then also Sean Whitmore, Director of Digital at Snapshot. Give you guys a chance to say hi real quick, and then we'll just do some basic housekeeping before the presentation gets started.
Cool. Yeah. Hi, everyone.
Hey, y'all. Zach here. I've been with CallRail for about 3 years now. I'm really excited to be here. Really big thank you to Search Engine Journal and also Snapshot, but excited to cover some of the topics that we're going to go through today.
Yeah, just to build off of that, Sean Whitmore, the Director of Digital. I have been in digital for majority of my career, Snapshot for almost 2 years, and I've been working with CallRail probably 4 or 5 years out of my career. So excited to be here today.
Awesome. So super excited too, especially to go over the content in today's webinar. Just to let everyone know, before we get started, we do have a chat area. So I see some people are chatting right now already, a little bit of conversation going on. If you can just kind of chime in and tell everyone where you're, I was going to say dialing in from, but I guess where you're webinaring in from would be amazing. Also, you'll notice at the bottom of your screen, multiple different emojis. So we love to support our presenters with happy faces, celebrations, hearts, raise the roof, whatever works for you. Gives everyone a chance to give Sean and Zach a chance to know how you all feel about the presentation as it's running. Speaking of how you feel or your opinions or questions, we do have a Q&A session that will be live at the end of this presentation. While Sean and Zach are presenting, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box. We'll be going through those, and I'll be serving as a moderator for the Q&A afterwards. So we'll pick some of the best questions that are voted up and ask away. And then also, I believe on slide 5, we'll be having one poll today. We highly encourage all attendees to answer the poll questions. Not only does that give our presenters excellent data on who you are, but also how to present, and then how to answer those questions we may have in the end. And then also, we do have a handout. In the handout section, you'll see a PDF from CallRail called AI Took My Job to the Next Level. So please go ahead and make sure you download that. And I believe that's it from a housekeeping perspective. I'll turn things over to you two, and then I'll be chiming in during the poll and during the Q&A session.
Cool. Yeah. Well, thank you, Lauren. So we'll kind of dive right into it. I've got a couple of things that I want to cover here. And kind of as Lauren said, there are a lot of aspects here that can be possibly things that people on the, in the audience here do already. There could be things that are a little contrarian. And I'm kind of hoping almost for a little bit of both. Because really at Snapshot, we see leveraging AI as finding more intelligent ways to automate routine or day-to-day tasks. That's because personally, as someone who is always the last one at their company to submit their timesheets, I feel there are much better things for me to spend my time on. With that said, some necessary and routine tasks can be entirely automated, never needing a human to review or intervene before the outcome is produced. What's on everyone's mind, though, is probably this last line. When it comes to tasks that require creativity, a human is not only required to review at the end, but the prompt itself needs to be engineered with creative tokens to train the model. That means if you have, for example, a dam of thousands of branded assets, your style guide, recent best performing creatives, those are all examples you already have, most likely, that can be ingested as tokens into these LLM models to start understanding what a creative output requires to be deemed successful. The models want to succeed. So the more tokens that you can give it, the better chance you're going to receive the desired final result. But with all that being said, this brings up the reality that some tasks can be entirely automated while others not so much. So let's run through them. As I said, I hate timesheets. So my dev and I literally came up with this script and AI model that we've automated with our time tracking software Harvest that integrates with our team's profiles. It records the timing of our meetings, the duration, and you can even layer in a note bot that records a brief description of your time block. Next, is kind of a housekeeping thing as well, but project management tasks. We use Monday, but whether it's that or something like Asana, there are open APIs that you can tap into and create templated PM tasks with a click of a button. For example, we have distinct verticals we work in, and whenever we onboard a new client, there are a set of 6 to 10 identical things that we have to do every single time that we do it. A Monday board needs to be created, roles are assigned, timelines are outlined, and even calendar invites are created across the roles that we've assigned to. So, and I know this might be one of the smallest things on this list, right, in terms of entirely things that we can automate. But it ties right back into the project management side of things, as there's so many routine meetings, whether it's the weekly status, the bi-weekly check-in, the quarterly reports even, that you can set up really at the start of any new project. It helps not, automate necessary dates and gates. It helps maintain accountability, and it gives your team obviously more time to do the actual work. For things that are partially automatable, I believe this list is kind of truly endless in theory, but we'll start with what we've been personally exploring. First is actually going to be blogs and on-site SEO. I bet I'm not the only one here that has experimented with this, but there's a huge caveat here. We at Snapshot don't believe AI content is anything other than a primer for a final piece of human-approved content. We'll get more into that in a second, but we have found ways to automate a lot of on-site technical SEO, like duplicated meta tags, missing H1s, etc. That just saves us a lot of time when we're working with custom sites and niche product verticals like industrial, which is one of Snapshot's verticals. Ad campaigns. This should be pretty straightforward, as there's been competing tools to automate ad campaigns for my entire career, going as far as Google including machine learning and everything from automated bidding to now, of course, like Performance Max. But for example, if you have like a tried and true build structure or a strategy that works and it's kind of templatized, maybe just need to feed it some keywords, or you've got the display assets or something like that, right? You can automate that using a couple of buttons with a workflow based on the context and effectively if-then statements. The one that's really interesting that I'm going to talk about around how CallRail has helped us is actually going to be MQL categorization, though, so marketing qualified leads. This is one I've worked with CallRail, HubSpot on quite a bit for some of our lead gen clients. Some of our clients' teams are pretty lean, and we all know the tensions that can exist between like sales and marketing. So the more we can pre-qualify or actually like qualify a marketing lead before a salesperson has to engage, the less time is spent on sifting through recordings, transcripts, or anything like that. Now, for some of what we've been talking about, there's some customization that would be needed. Where previously you would have needed to code the workflows with a developer, you can now leverage workflow management tools such as Make, Windmill, or Mage. We specifically use Make on the front end and Windmill on the back end, as they're codeless, and they afford us the ability to drag and drop our workflows once we've authorized the connection to the applications that we're using. So that means we can start to think of our day-to-day work or what we may need to prompt to start a creative task as a scenario in terms of what we're working on. Whether it's filling out your timesheets or starting on an SEO briefed blog, it all begins here. So now, before we're going to do an example of what an AI workflow can look like, I want to just call out a very important point that we at Snapshot share. That is, generative AI helps teams create efficiencies. It does not replace creativity. At the very best, what I have seen and how I like to use it, it really can jumpstart a brand new conversation, possibly even a new idea. Now, with that in mind, let's outline an example of what one of these workflows can look like. This is an example of a workflow we're working on with a client who's actually interested and came to us to see how AI can speed up their blog writing. Now, we at first push back because our POV is that if you're over leveraging ChatGPT, if you're not having that human resource, that human review, and you're creating these blogs en masse, you're going to be specifically flagged, possibly targeted by Google, and deranked accordingly. So that actually started a lot of internal discussions, though, and it led to what we found to be the most human-centric AI workflow for creating content in general. We're still in the fine-tuning it for multimedia, but I wanted to show you what I meant about how AI supports human creativity. It doesn't replace it just yet. So let's start with like a content calendar, that lives in a spreadsheet, for example. In this example, we're referencing the keyword universe that our SEO specialists create when working with a new SEO client. This will include all the relevant keywords we are currently ranking for and what we want to rank for, their associated difficulty levels, and how they roll up into content pillars that inform the overall SEO-informed content strategy. Then let's say that we have that living in like a project management tool such as Monday. We can set up a workflow that creates a task to create a blog based on the top keywords of, say, content pillar 1 of the keyword universe. At this point, We have a multi-LLM model that we've been employing that encompasses not just ChatGPT, but also Anthropic's Claude, Meta AI, and Perplexity as a multi-step set of checks and balances for ensuring the content is not only accurate, but reads like a human wrote it. Now, these are 1,500 to 2,000 word blogs that we're talking about. So in order to do that well, we had to feed the LLM model over 100 to 200,000 tokens overall, and sometimes per blog. That's where the crucial element of prompt engineering and token training differentiates the work from just typing a prompt into GPT. We've also trained the model against multiple AI detector tools whose efficacy is questionable at best, mind you, and we still produce human-like results the very first time we run. Now, our workflow spits out a blog tagging our lead copywriter to go in and review. This is a crucial step, bolded for a reason, as the philosophy behind this is to get to about 85% complete. Our copywriter then comes in and reviews against both the copy and the SEO briefs, edits a handful of lines, adds in his own flair, and in the same tool is able to publish to whatever CMS we are working with. All of this can be done in less than an hour. In fact, the LLM model itself spits out a blog within like 1 to 3 seconds. But this has specifically helped reduce an overall time to write content from 8 hours to just about 1. Now, I know that was a lot. So I think we have a poll for the audience here, Lauren. Don't know if you want to step back.
Yes, we do. So launching the poll. And the question is, how many AI tools are you currently using to improve workplace efficiencies? 0, 1, 2, or 3 or more. So if you can go ahead and answer the questions. Looks like we have quite a few of you are voting, and I'm not going to share the results yet, but very interesting to see. And I'll go ahead and share now. Let's see here. All right. So how many AI tools are you currently using to improve workplace efficiencies? About 33% have said 3 or more, 28% 2, 33% 1, and then just 7% are not using any AI tools at the moment. Any thoughts there?
Oh, it's very interesting. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of people have been experimenting with a lot of different tools. So it's great to see, and I'd be curious to kind of hear about specifically what people's experience have been with them too.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of at that like inflection point a little bit. Like some people are really adopting it, some people are a little bit hesitant. So I think that 3+ is going to grow, you know, in the next months. But I do think that's really, really interesting to see a pretty even spread.
Yeah. It was funny. We were actually just chatting about this previously in that, like, right now, I think the inflection point is just a great call out, because we're right now hearing, you know, some agencies are saying, you know, don't use AI because Google is going to just like, they're going to find out, you know, and you're going to be deranked. I mean, that's just SEO. There's of course internal usages of AI there. But, you know, it's really interesting because then there's agencies out there that are really promoting this and, you know, kind of branding them as, you know, generative engine optimization, right? I know that's been thrown around quite a bit. GEO, the evolution of SEO. So yeah, it's a great call out. It's ever changing, right? Like we won't even know what AI will truly look like in 12 to 24 months, not even 6 months. So it's really interesting. Cool. All right. Well, we can keep carrying on here. So yeah, well, before I hand it off to Zach, I wanted to share some specific examples of how CallRail has helped our clients. One without AI, it's kind of more of an operational efficiency thing, and one with that is actually pretty close to my heart a little bit, given the industry and the client itself. You know, the first one is actually one of my favorite kind of recent aha moments I've had with a client. One week we got a rather distressing email from one of our clients that they just did not feel like they were getting anything from their marketing. They weren't getting any calls, you know, from any of our media efforts, paid, organic, you know, earned. You know, and my account director and I, we were like pretty perplexed. So I decided to spend my morning building a little dashboard using the CallRail API connector via Supermetrics, which is one of our partners as well, you know, in our Looker studio that we have for the client. I kind of built in a new tab, kind of just started playing with it. once I did that, I was able to identify that week in question, it was like the week of May 18th, I believe here. There was actually 20 calls that were received on, I think, this particular day. That was more than the week before. It was more than the year before. And out of these 20 calls, only 11 were answered. 9 were missed, right? And I'm sure all of us, here as marketers, have been, asked by a client, what am I getting out of my marketing? I'm not getting anything out of it. And on your end, you're seeing all this data come in, and really we've been using a lot of this data with CallRail to kind of create operational efficiencies, especially in the healthcare space, as some of our clients, obviously CallRail is HIPAA compliant, but some of our clients, especially in the healthcare space, they don't know what CallRail is. They might know what call tracking is, but they really don't understand the true value of it. And how like it can actually improve, your operations, the team that's taking the calls, what are they asking? Are they pre-qualifying on the call? Are they using the tools built in with CallRail to qualify the call? And specifically that kind of leads into conversation intelligence. This last piece here, I just really want to call out because there's a client that we're working with. They're a very small shop. We actually, the person answering the phone is pretty much a one-woman shop. And she was using a previous tool where she had to like have the phone and then have her notes. And then like, it was just a lot for her to do. And especially in the space that she's in behavioral health, a lot of people are calling in kind of their worst days. And, she's got to be very attentive and very present, on the phone. And one thing that we were able to do, and this is like kind of a screenshot specifically of kind of like the key terms and phrases that we're able to kind of like, track for what's a qualified call, specifically kind of the common terms she would say at the latter half of a call, an intake call, for example, that would kind of qualify to the next stage, and what was cool about this is someone who started in Google Ads in particular, a lot of this was keyword mining, so it was actually kind of turned my brain on to be like, oh, okay, wait a second. Well, I don't exactly know how you qualify, an incoming patient, for example, but what are kind of the key things that comes up? And so you kind of start to think about that. And what's cool, it's not really shown here, is that if you also have a list of keywords that you absolutely don't want to have come up as a qualified lead, something that kind of like immediately makes it unqualified, for example, you can do that too, as kind of like negative keywords, which is pretty cool. And what's really great is that once you set this up, this can be all entirely automated so that my client can be on the phone 100% present, and afterwards kind of go in and see, what the sentiment overall was, even though she probably has a great idea too. But at scale, it gives her kind of like a quick view of like how things are trending, especially when it comes to like, digital ads performance, right? Before she had no idea, or she was relying strictly on the Google Ads calls from ads conversion, for example, right? Which can be, hit or miss, right? And so now we've got total raw leads of phone calls that came in, and specifically the qualified leads that came in because they're triggered one of these key terms and phrases. That gives her just like a quick view of like where to focus her attention, at like kind of the end of the day, or again, that next stage after those MQLs have been kind of like qualified. And all of this is using AI, and I think Zach will speak to it a little bit more, but like as you set it up, it kind of learns over time and it gets better and better, just like any other machine learning tool, and with that, I'd love to pass it over to Zach, who can explain a little bit more about the benefits of CallRail.
Cool. Thank you, Sean. Before I get into it, I do want to make like a really quick point because I think it's important to illustrate. You said just a couple of years ago, she was on the phone and she was taking notes and everything. And I feel like that maturity model is advancing, and it's advancing at such a rapid pace. First you had your notes, physical notes. And then you had, your call recordings that you could go back and listen to later on. And now you have these transcripts, and then now you have these AI generated summaries of calls and everything. And I feel like it's only going to be a matter of time before, you might not even have to field the call. Again, like what you were saying, who knows what AI is going to do in the next 12 to 24 months, but it's an exciting journey and we're here. And I just wanted to tell everybody a little bit more about CallRail. And before I go into some of the specific features that CallRail is built to provide ROI through artificial intelligence, I do want to take a little bit of a reset for those who aren't familiar with CallRail as a company or as a brand. So we're a company who's committed to helping agencies provide tangible value and ROI to their clients. That's the core of it. Lead attribution and a better comprehension of marketing ROI are the initial opportunities that founded this company way back when in 2011. And it's what continues to drive our investments today. A large part of that being the improvement of B2C marketing through conversational AI. We're here to provide a precise understanding of what brings in leads, allowing you to understand what constitutes a good lead versus a bad lead, and how you can convert and nurture those leads into great customers for both your agency and the clients that you serve. So, as I said, since 2011, we've grown our company to actively serve more than 200,000 businesses by quantitatively proving and improving marketing ROI. And we want to expand on that impact through the innovation in the realm of artificial intelligence. We're one of the highest rated call tracking providers, and our customers continue to validate that on review platforms like G2. And to get into it and to get into how we do it, I do want to highlight a couple of features that reinforce those reviews. CallRail has 3 pillars, the first of which being lead tracking, but we also focus intently on lead intelligence and lead management. In essence, the full gambit of understanding your marketing return on investment. CallRail provides full coverage to ensure that you bring in more high quality leads at a lower cost. And not only that, but that you turn them into loyal customers that continue to come back again and again. And in these conversations, there's so much valuable information, and we strive to make that information extractable and digestible for every agent on you or your client's team. So working with a third-party agency, Hobson ROI, we found that our customers experience a 20% reduction in their overall cost per lead, which is an immediate no-brainer in choosing a call tracking provider. And this statistic is really beautifully illustrated in our patent-pending self-reported attribution feature, where we leverage artificial intelligence to not only surface the digital or offline attribution source, but also the sources that typically go unreported. Every single conversation has some allusion to the open house sign that you use, or those vehicle wraps that your client can invest in, or just the common friendly referral. But those otherwise unquantifiable marketing assets that carry expenses but typically go unreported. But these have an inherent value to businesses, and it's been tough to prove that without a dedicated headcount until the utilization of artificial intelligence. But through CallRail's conversation intelligence, we and you are able to prove that through extremely accurate reporting. And furthermore, CallRail can scan every single conversation to surface commonly spoken keywords or phrases that automate bidding strategies to identify the most commonly searched terms and bring more of those high quality leads at the least cost to you. And that's featured, I think, on the next slide there. Yeah, so this is our key term spotted report. It immediately surfaces every commonly used term that you can pump into your bidding strategies and improve your return on investment whenever it comes to your bidding strategies. And then as far, and then going into lead management, which I think is something that agencies, they're not necessarily responsible for, but they want their clients to be able to maximize the leads that agencies are delivering. So, with a lot more leads come a lot more problems, and that's specifically tied to bandwidth. And that can illustrate problems in the conversion of those leads. But a recently launched tool from CallRail is Convert Assist, and this can help your client see a minimum of 7% increased close rates through the automation, through AI automation. With the click of a button, you can immediately find out the next steps that your agent should go ahead and take advantage of. You can look at the coaching tool to experience customer experience improvement opportunities or opportunities to laud them for successes. And then you can even leverage the AI to generate a follow-up text or an email. And all of this can be done without ever going back and listening to a single phone call. So you get all of these tangible assets that can help you convert these leads with almost no time wasted. And this gives your clients back the time and money to focus on scaling the business, which at the end of the day, we all know that's the most important thing. So that's where we are today. But like I said earlier, all of this is moving at such an incredible pace that I'd be naive to try and predict what comes next. I don't think anybody can accurately make that prediction. And that's why we brought out CallRail Labs. Labs is meant to allow our users not only test our hypotheses of what AI can accomplish, but also provide avenues of feedback to shape them into tangible, valuable products that go into the market. And as you can see here through previous tests like appointment scheduled and caller details, at the click of a button, you can immediately identify new appointments or sales, or note personal client details to foster deep, long-lasting relationships. And you can take all of this information and then inject it into your CRM or wherever you're working. So you don't need to go into the app to get these sorts of insights. All of this AI generated information can be shown where your agents are on their day-to-day. So again, kind of to close out my part, we're obviously entering a new frontier, but we're all trying to adapt and make the most of it. I think Sean's workflows really beautifully illustrate that, but it's important to note that AI is here, whether we want it or not. And the companies that jump on it now are going to be the ones that really thrive in the future. And it's going to be vital to test, experiment, iterate, and give feedback on all of these AI solutions and strategies that we're all testing day to day. And so I do want to invite y'all to go ahead and test out the full conversational AI suite by going ahead and scanning the QR code on the screen there. And this can help you get started on a free 14-day trial. No credit card required. And this can help you see how you can help your clients leverage AI tools to continue driving marketing ROI, excuse me.
Great.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Sean and Zach, for covering that. Definitely got some ideas brewing, as well as some questions coming in. So let's go ahead and jump into our Q&A. Start things off with first question. What are the leading trends we're seeing with agencies employing AI? What trends are we seeing out there with different agencies that you work with, or any trends that you've noticed on your side, Sean, as well?
Yeah. I have seen kind of a whole mixed bag, the whole gamut. I was just at a conference in New York where I think it was iPullRank had a really great presentation of how they do something very similar to how we're working with this client, and how they're kind of tearing it back into generative engine optimization is kind of like a focus. And they're kind of like gung ho about it. Right. And then I've seen a lot of agencies just use ChatGPT and kind of like a one prompt kind of like output. And I think that there is going to be a range of that for a while. And I think it really is going to be the competitive difference, the competitive advantage that an agency is going to have is going to not only be like using AI, but is, creating their own model. So the model that we spoke to, it's still very much in the works, but it's actually all downloaded and like on site at Snapshot's headquarters. And we've been training it, with, hundreds of thousands of tokens. So we're kind of branding it for our own use case. And, I would say that, it's a lot of work. It's not like any agency can just start and do that. But I would recommend that you kind of look into that because it's going to go way beyond just using AI. It's going to be how are you perfecting your usage of AI, I think, very soon. So.
Yeah, and I can build on that a little bit too. I've had conversations with some of our customers and I think it's really getting to that point of, as far as conversational AI goes, it's getting into this like very niche application. So what I've seen some agencies do is take the transcript that's generated by conversation intelligence and build off their own AI models. This is again like the really sophisticated early adopters of AI, but in the legal space, there was a law firm that I was talking to, and they got a call, they got the transcript, but they wanted to take different actions based on the type of case that it was, whether it was family law or employment law or something. They have different automations that they want to apply to it depending on the type of case that they're getting. So they were taking our transcripts and building on their own AI automations onto it. So it's available through the API, and they're taking that and they're really applying it to their business specifically. So I think there are these swathing solutions that AI can provide, but there's also an opportunity to really customize these AI solutions for your business or for your industry or things like that. It's interesting to see the routes that different agencies are embarking on.
Sean, you had brought up the concern about using AI to generate content that's not necessarily ready for prime time, right? That hasn't gone through that human review process, or just content that doesn't serve more as an outline for then a writer to take and then turn into an original piece of content. Besides that, what other concerns have clients shared around the use of AI?
I would say that because we work a lot in the healthcare space, when Google released the generative AI like first release, that was a huge cause of concern, as it was obviously producing not only questionable but inaccurate results. In the healthcare space, there's obviously implications if someone gets that and gets the wrong information that impacts their health. That was the very number one concern that we had. And I'd say in that space, kind of similar to Zach's example of like legality, I think there was a couple of examples where people like law associates were using ChatGPT to, use for like, trial cases, and ChatGPT was making things up. So it's not only inaccurate, it can be creative, right? And so the human review part, I think is going to be extremely important. I think it's kind of in tandem with why you started to hear about prompt engineers making like six figures, and you're like, what? You just talking about like, and so there's just going to need to be an element of creativity at the start, which is why in our workflow, like using that content calendar, that's hours of work that a human has to do first. And then we have a system in place so that once they have all that information, because it's, SEO used to be extremely daunting, right? There's just so much going on. There's so much unknown about it sometimes still, especially as Google makes changes. And so you got to have that element always in place. It's just the workflow and how AI is learning from what you're doing that speeds up the output. And so I think the concerns are truly valid. But I really think that, as Zach said, we're at an inflection point where we can't just ignore it because we're concerned. We have to not only just adapt, but we have to kind of take ownership of how we want it to end up as well. So yeah.
I think there's also a little bit of a concern, really there's hesitance on the accuracy of it all. So the way that AI works, or at least our application of it, it's like if you put garbage into it, you're going to get garbage out of it. But if you put gold into it, you're going to get, exponential diamonds out of it, really. So that's why, if you do something fairly straightforward, you have concise inputs like your project management or your calendars or some of the examples that you had before, you're going to get really trustworthy, very, very accurate results. And the same goes with the transcripts that we build off of. We leverage Assembly AI, which is trained on, I think, over 15 million hours of audio data. So it's beaten every single other competitor out there in terms of accuracy and speed to accuracy. One of the lowest word error rates available on the market. So what we do is we take this extremely accurate transcript, i.e. gold, and then we build all of these AI insights on top of it, which turn into diamonds. And so the more accurate you can get from the start, the more accurate you're going to be whenever you get that AI generated result or, tangible asset out of it. So I think accuracy and trustworthiness is a legitimate concern, but I think that's starting to go away a little bit as the models reinforce themselves and build on the intelligence they're learning. But it's, still something that I hear today.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see how Google has reintroduced AI overviews, not just from an accuracy, but from a sourcing perspective. So that's really good to hear on that end. Especially, I like your analogy of if you're dumping garbage into it, you're going to get garbage back, right? But gold, you're going to hopefully compress. Hopefully you're not dumping coal to compress into diamonds. But gold into diamonds sounds a lot better. So super cool. Now, where do you guys see AI heading in the next 18 to 24 months? What does that look like for AI?
Yeah, kind of like how we were we were saying, I really just don't think that we know. I mean, if we think about like 2 years ago when the first videos came out and they were horrifying, and now, the recent, I think Sora, I might be blanking on that. It's really close. It's really good. I will still say that for me personally, I can actually kind of tell when something's like AI generated. There is just like really like this like glossy feel that like maybe it's because I'm chronically online, but like you can just kind of tell when something has almost been like photoshopped or not. And so I still kind of see that, but that is an incredible jump in just 2 years, right? So if we're talking 24 months, it could possibly be, significantly better to the point where it's indistinguishable from man-made. And that's just like the video content. I mean, right now what we're doing is so kind of niche and specific and trained on specific clients, brand, tone, and feel, their literal brand voice. And that's already getting to the point where we're discussing today, where we can kind of, you don't even know that an AI wrote most of it. And so, where that looks in 18 to 24 months, I mean, honestly, it could be that you have apps coming out that there's an entire industry and economy, which I know there already is, vying for kind of like dominance in the space when the ubiquity of some of these tools and their accuracy is so high. You can go from ChatGPT to Meta AI. It doesn't even matter, and you're going to get kind of similar results. Where what's interesting about that is like if we go back to like how Google has search dominance, right? Some people might use Bing, some people might use DuckDuckGo, some people were using Yahoo for a while, right? But Google really won out because it had the very best product. I think it'll be interesting to see if there's something like that occurs, because ChatGPT came onto the market, but then, I think it's Lambda 3, I think, with Meta AI, and that dropped, and it really shifted a lot of what we were focusing on, what results we were getting, and then Claude. And so it's just, there's so many great AI tools out there that it would be kind of interesting to see if they all kind of accelerate at such a pace that people have so many choices to kind of choose from, and that, to create content could become even, more cost effective, which is, I think, exciting, especially for marketers, and especially as content, has always been kind of very expensive to produce. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like I said already, I'm naive if I can predict what the next tools are going to be. But what I do envision happening is those early adopters who are playing around with it now and iterating upon it. I see the gap growing in between the ones who are a little bit hesitant to adopt this stuff, at least in a safe, practical manner for businesses. But I do feel like there is going to be a gap that is imposed on people who just continue to do the traditional way of going about things versus the people that are really adopting these tools and enhancing their efficiencies and enhancing their workflows. That's really, I think, the only thing that I could reasonably and confidently predict.
Before you're going through the CallRail examples, Zach, of the different prompts for text and email follow-up that can be generated and really save clients time on that side, nurturing that lead until the sale is made, or maybe even afterwards as well. Do you see like Convert Assist eventually being an AI voice answering service, so that when we run through every call, the AI first to ensure pickup, and then proper routing, or even things like setting up an appointment? So there isn't that gap where someone's maybe leaving a message or whatever it may be, and then gets that follow-up afterwards, like having that entire conversation running through an AI tool.
I think that's a really interesting question, and I don't see that outside the realm of possibility. I clicked a button on my phone the other day and made a reservation at a restaurant. Google called for me and booked a reservation like that. It exists now. But I do want to go back to Sean's point a little bit. Like, I don't think that human element or human touch is ever going to go away completely. I don't think AI can ever meet the personability and the relationships that human to human can have. So I do think there's going to be an element of that in the future, but I don't know if it's going to be 100% the norm for everybody. I do I do think humans will always be involved in the conversation in the lead nurturing process.
Excellent. This question came in for you, Sean. What AI tools do you recommend to gain better ROI for ad campaigns on Google Ads or LinkedIn?
So it depends on what specifically you're trying to do on those platforms. So if it's from an ad setup standpoint, we haven't really explored too much of leveraging from a setup standpoint. I mean, we have templates that we can sometimes use, that can automate it. But to be fair, we have found that, since we're kind of Google Ads experts, that we actually haven't needed necessarily AI to do that. We have explored a couple of tools that provide like insights, not like outside of the Google Ads platform. I think that they have some like AI insights into how like your campaigns are performing, but they kind of perform very similarly to what we see in the platform themselves, which from our standpoint are not the best. So kind of going back to Zach's point, like we really need a human sometimes to kind of like cut through the noise of what possibly Google is trying to sell us to do, or what this platform might have mistakenly kind of understood based on the context of an intent-based keyword. Right now, I wouldn't say that I would recommend leveraging a specific AI tool to set up campaigns. And again, from an insight standpoint, I prefer to have someone go in and actually look at it. Of course, humans can make mistakes as well. But sometimes I've seen just kind of like totally inaccurate assumptions about how my campaigns are performing. Especially with, what Google is doing with like broad match AI right now. Like Google has always done this, right? A tool comes out that is a third-party tool that kind of makes your life easier as a marketer. Google figures it out, and then within the next 2 years rolls out an internal feature so that tool becomes completely outmoded. I think Google's gonna do the same thing here. We've run some tests with broad match AI. It is very interesting to some degree. Can be very good or very bad. Kind of like with anything else Google launches for the first 6 months or so. And so, I would probably hold off on trying to like chase, some type of efficiency and just trying to set up a campaign in Google. Again, in the course of my career, from going from manual bidding in Google Ads and adjusting bids by keyword, product by product, there's a lot of like kind of like quality of life enhancements that Google has used AI for, built within the product itself. Now, when you're working at scale, you're going to leverage, of course, a couple of different third-party tools. But in terms of specific AI tools, I wouldn't have any specific recommendation on that. But Zach, I don't know if you can specifically speak to that. But I wouldn't recommend it right now.
Yeah, I personally don't, but I think that's certainly your territory.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So one interesting question that came through is, Sean, you went through kind of a demo of the different tools and training and everything that you utilize to build out that content strategy based upon the keyword calendar. One question that came in is like, so at the end of the day, is that content solely written, or is it an entire post that also supplies things like photos, puts data into charts, maybe embeds or recommends a video to embed that helps support said content, lists out different citations or FAQs at the end of the piece? What are we looking at there in terms of how human-like or how complete are these posts once they get through that entire process?
Yeah, actually, all of the above. I did kind of mention that we're fine-tuning the multimedia aspect. It's actually ready to go with all of that. I actually personally stopped with the images internally at the moment because I wanted them to be better. And so some of them kind of look, they're not necessarily stock-ish, but they're like stock-esque. And so we are kind of continually to like, prune that out because one, we're doing this for actually a client who actually wants to make sure it's like the best possible piece of content that lives on their website. And that's kind of like a main driver there, but also because, again, I don't want like any agency to get into kind of like the rut of just like using ChatGPT just to get through the day. We really still need to produce high quality content, as that's what Google is going to prioritize, right? They always will prioritize the best possible content, the most accurate content, the most useful content. And so, that's another driver there. But actually, yes, we can produce all of that right now, and specifically citations. I love that you called that out, because when we first ran the V1 of this, oddly enough, the model quoted one of Snapshot's own blogs, and that was kind of funny. And so, and that was kind of like the V1 of that like citation was coming from a V1 blog as well. So it was kind of like speaking to itself a little bit. But yeah, that's actually, not too far away. It's possible today. But it kind of like comes back to like, the point of it all, right? We want to write the best possible piece of information that not only ranks, but gives the right information. So that's also kind of like the visual storytelling element as well, that I think for me personally is going to take a little bit longer, but it's technically possible today. So,
I'm just happy they finally got past giving people like 14 fingers in AI generated pictures.
Yeah,
exactly. That's one question I was going to add to that too. When the AI is generating images, are these original images that are generated specifically just for that post, or are these images coming from like an image bank somewhere?
So you can do both. We've trained it on like whatever branded assets or whatever like assets we have from the client, for example, or even in to supplement that, assets we believe are relevant. So that's kind of one of the tokens there. And then it does kind of auto-generate it. To Zach's point, there are still some like interesting quirks. We're not seeing the fingers too much anymore, but we were seeing like for one of the healthcare ones when we first tried it, like it was like a doctor walking down a hallway, but he was like facing the wall. And it was just like things like that will take a lot of time, a lot of training, a lot of pruning. But at the end of the day too, we try to leverage, if we can, kind of going back to that, like it gets you 85% of the way there. The way that I'm kind of trying to get to is where the copywriter or the person who's going to publish blog, because sometimes we set this up for the client to do themselves as well. It gets you 85% there. And then you add the images you already have available. You're like, oh, I see what they're saying. And then it kind of inspires you to do that. And then what we've seen is that it's almost kind of breaking down the creative process in itself, where it's just like reading what someone else wrote is giving you inspiration to find the right image that actually might, by the end of it, you've tweaked the ending of your post a little bit. You've added a little bit of your own flair. And then, you have that there, and it only took you, again, it takes you 45 minutes, it takes you an hour, where writing up to 2,000 words with the SEO brief in mind, making sure that you're being, effective and also not keyword stuffing, right? Like, and then sourcing the images and all that. I mean, that was taking, to do a really good one, 8 hours. So that's kind of the whole idea from an efficiency standpoint, is that you're not losing that element. You're actually being inspired to provide your best part of the post, if that makes sense.
What about on the video side?
We're not at a place yet where we're doing anything with video on this just yet. It's because once you get past about like 5 seconds, you find things kind of break down a little bit, and so many different ways, and it completely depends. But kind of speaking to like the multiple fingers thing, or the lips aren't quite moving right. You will see a lot on the market right now. I think they're like avatar apps that are using AI, and they can like kind of scan you, and then it's kind of you talking. And I'm a little bit of like obsessed when I see those, because I'll like stare at the teeth or stare at the mouth, and something's off, right? So I think it can be, it can be effective in the sense that if someone's not paying a great deal of attention, it can work. But at the end of the day, like, what is the goal, right? If like I was talking with a client just yesterday about this, because they were talking about the same app actually, and they were saying like, well, it'd be great because if I didn't have a camera or anything, it's like, oh, you have a camera on your phone. So it seems kind of like using AI to use it because it's cool, which is awesome. I mean, everyone should be using it, right? But it's using it intentionally and using it effectively. I think we're going to start to see that shape up. And then, I mean, entire industries or entire apps are going to be created once people figure that out, templatize it, and can kind of sell it to the masses. So,
go ahead, Zach. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I love that, because it's so trendy right now. People are just like starting new companies.ai.
mm-hmm.
And it's just utilization of AI without really any value or intent behind it. And that's why like we're moving forward, CallRail is, but we're moving forward a little bit cautiously, and with intention. And I think that's the most important thing. And what allows us to do that is really this feedback loop. And I think that's true of AI in general. It spits out an output. You say, no, that's bad, do it again. Or you say that's good, and it reinforces it. So it continues to learn. But also with our labs program, like we are constantly asking people to try it out and give us feedback. So the AI isn't just like slapping AI on something for the sake of it. It's about like actually using AI to generate value. It's improving efficiencies. It's generating value. It's tangible. It's not just for the sake of it.
Mm-hmm. I like to speak. I kind of have an analogy about this that I was kind of hesitant to bring up, but I actually, one of my first jobs right out of college, before getting into digital marketing, I actually did some like virtual reality market research. Oddly enough, it was right around 2015 when Zuckerberg just bought Oculus for like I think $2 billion, right? So it was so like VR was everywhere. Like VR this, AR that. Pokemon Go was like only a couple of years later, right? And that was actually a true viral like moment in time, especially a cultural significant one too. And everyone was like, we got to put VR in this. How do we make this in VR? Like people had business cards in VR, and I was like, what? Like it was just so much overuse of it because it was like hot right there. And what was interesting, I think AI is different because I think it's going to truly improve our lives. And there's so many competitors in this moment, like trying to make it as good as possible, right? But where VR was a little different was that in the same studies that we were finding and that we were doing, right, is that 80% or 90% of everyone of every age cohort or demographic thought VR was so cool, right? And out of those people, they would definitely want to try it. But would they try it more than once? 20% would. So it just kind of plummeted. And of course, VR is still popular today, right? But I would say in comparison to where the hype was in 2015, it's night and day. And I think, AI is not going to necessarily go that same route just because of the immense application it can have and how, especially when Instagram updated or Meta updated, and that you can now use Meta AI in your phone. I mean, that was just a huge unlock from an accessibility standpoint. So where VR was kind of traditionally inaccessible, kind of a high cost of entry, so to speak, still is, for most people. Most people have a phone, most people have Instagram, or most people are on the Meta platform to some degree, and they can quickly just do that, and it's completely free. So, that's kind of where I think it is. Now, again, you can go into Meta AI right now, and like, let's say, I've done this actually as a thought exercise too. Come up with like a brand logo for a marketing agency, and you've got the name. Just call it whatever the name is, right? Try to do that and make sure that the text shows up. You'll see that the AI model is still not at a place of generating text. And it's strange because a lot of these AI models were really built off of autocorrect. It's kind of strange, but it really just does not do that very well. Now, that'll improve over time, of course. Same with charts. I think, Lauren, you mentioned like, can it auto generate charts? We run into the same thing, actually. And it's for some reason, you can't even do a straight line sometimes. Now, again, modeling or training, over time and that engineering, it definitely can improve it. But then you got to start to think about cost efficiency, right? You got to start to think about the amount of time it's going to take me to train this model to do a graph in Excel that I've been doing for 10 years in my career that I can do in 15 seconds. So you got to start to think about like, why would I spend so much time doing it? Now, once you get there, right? Once you get there, then it's really great. But it's kind of like the old developer adage. You spend 5 hours to automate a 15-minute task. It's kind of the same concept that we're seeing with AI right now.
Yeah, it's not using AI for the sake of usage, right? When you put something out. And just to make sure, Sean, we're not speaking to an AI generated video representation of yourself right now, right? Like you're really
well, you wouldn't know necessarily, right? If I correct the model. So
when you're going through your AI workflow earlier, Alan asks, what tool do you use to connect everything together? Are you using a tool like make.com or something else along those terms?
Yeah, so we use make.com on the front end because that gives you a great drag and drop feature. It's crazy how intuitive it is. And then my developer, who's really the one who can speak to it a lot better, my director of development, is doing a lot of the windmill back end. It's codeless still, which is why we prefer it. But that's where a lot of the kind of like the work happens between the different models themselves and how we kind of get it back into Make. We mentioned Mage as well. Mage does, I think it's useful for SQL. If anyone if someone does write SQL, or kind of works with a team that does. We don't use that. Again, we try to keep it as codeless as possible. But there's several out there that you can find based on what you're currently doing and how you kind of implement it.
Very cool. Very cool. And we've kind of gone over this a bit, but one question that came in is, what future advancements can be expected in the integration of AI, SEO, and call tracking platforms such as CallRail, and how will they impact overall digital marketing strategies?
That's a great question. It's pretty broad, actually. I really think that it's going to continue to be a part of the conversation no matter what. Actually, even when we were kind of ideating on this topic, Zach and the Search Engine Journal team, we were like, well, AI is really broad, right? Everyone's talking about it. Like, what are the most valuable things that I think that an agency wants to kind of hear, kind of tangible things, not just kind of like I mean, I love the handout, it's coming for your job, but to make it better. And I think that it's going to always be a part of the conversation, but I would say I would be hesitant to rely on a lot of like AI insights for your specific marketing KPIs or kind of trend to performance. Now, maybe trend or historical trends can be really good, as that's something you should be able to quickly see and the AI should be able to pick up. We've just run into a lot of like quirks where just the AI just does not understand the context of why we're leveraging these keywords. And again, it comes down to like especially like in the healthcare space, you got to be very careful what kind of keywords you're running into or you're running, because there's so much overlap between competing like subsectors of that, right? And an AI model, with a lot of training would be able to get that. But again, if it takes me 15 seconds to be like, oh no, that's specifically for like behavioral health or addiction treatment center, and that one specifically for detox, that's a completely, it's like, why spend all that time on that model specifically then? Now, again, as the proliferation of this gets, more and more, and people are using it more and more, and that means that models are training on larger and larger data sets, it could become very, very good at a press of a button. Just like when you can get on Meta AI and ask a question about something, you could possibly do the same thing with your ad campaign. Like, go into the Google Ads platform and it's got like an AI advisor, and you're asking like, hey, I'm not at my computer right now, and I don't want to look at the Google Ads app, but like, what's my week over week performance, and then it gives you kind of like a quick snapshot of like how it's performing. So I'm sure that will probably be integrated into a lot of tools, such as like, the ad platforms, and any of these other tools that we're talking
about. Anything on your end, Zach?
Well, I mean, I think so. We're very much in that space right now. We're trying to figure that out. And that's, I talked about CallRail Labs. That's us very quickly pushing these alpha features out there to get people to test it. And, one of the ones that we launched just last week is, at the click of a button, go through the transcript, tell me whether this is a good lead or not, so I can pass it off to my sales team. So from like a digital marketing perspective, like you're bringing in all these leads, but how do I capitalize on them at the end of the day? That's kind of the most important thing that we're focusing on right now, because as a marketer, you're trying to turn this marketing spend into revenue, and you want to maximize that ROI. And that's what a lot of our alpha features that we're releasing through Premium Conversation Intelligence are trying to accomplish. So we're releasing this stuff and we're getting learnings on what is actually working for our clients. And I think what's ultimately going to impact the future of this is people using it. Like, you don't really know what you know until you know it. It's this great unknown. There's no set expectations or anything. So I really think like the more you use it, the more you learn, the more it learns. And I think it's just gonna like the ultimate impact or the final horizon line of AI is going to be dictated by the people that use it.
Very cool. Very cool. And a great way to end today's webinar and presentation. Sean and Zach, really appreciate you taking the time today to teach our audience over at Search Engine Journal and myself how you're utilizing AI, not just on the publishing and content side of things, but also on the customer service side. It's and call tracking. It's really cool to see. And we are in its infancy, even though it's been about 2 years, year and a half, whatever it may be. I can't wait to see what happens in the next 18 to 24 months. Speaking of which, for those of you that are still with us, do make sure that you go ahead to the handout section and download CallRail's ebook, AI Took My Job to the Next Level. So Sean and Zach, it's really been a pleasure. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having both of you today.
Cool. Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And just stay tuned for our next SEJ webinar that we'll be having on Wednesday, September 25th at the same time. Navigating SERP complexity, how to leverage search intent for SEO, brought to you by Stat and Tom Capper. So be sure to go to searchenginejournal.com to register for their next upcoming webinar, or just look out in your emails or wherever we contact you to do so as well. And as a reminder, the slides from today's presentation along with the video will be made available for all registrants and attendees that showed up today. Again, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And thank all of you who attended today's webinar. It's been great.
Thanks, everyone.